Hi, I'm Steve Clapham, and welcome to the second of our Fund Red Flags videos. We're revisiting Greensill and the Credit Suisse Supply Chain Finance Funds. I'm from Behind the Balance Sheet, and if you wouldn't mind subscribing to our channel, we'd really appreciate it. So why are we returning to this story? Well, every day there seems to be some new revelation in the newspapers. And over the past few days, there's been two stories that we found really quite remarkable. And let me share this with you and see what you think. So this is the first of the two articles, the Credit Suisse pegs potential Greensill fund losses at 3 billion story. 3 billion out the 10 billion. Remember that this was a low risk short-term finance fund or a series of funds in which you were going to get 1.5% over LIBOR. So you weren't expecting to see 70% of your money being questioned. In fact, it says here that 1,000 investors are trapped in the fund. Credit Suisse has already returned 3 and plans to pay a further 1 in early April. But what caught my eye as being really interesting was this. GFG Alliance, the Gupta steel empire, if you can use the word empire, owes $1.3 billion to the fund and indicate it can't pay them back. Bluestone Resources, which is in a lawsuit against Greensill, coal mining group, has said it's not capable of repaying $850 million. And Credit Suisse executives do not expect to receive up to $400 million lent to Catera, a SoftBank-backed construction startup. Now, if you've seen our previous video, and if you haven't, you should go and watch it after this one, we looked at the fact sheet. And this is the fact sheet as of January 29th for the largest of the 4 funds, which at this point had $6.8 billion. You can just see that there under management. And you'll recall that I went through the top 10 obligors and I said, these look very, very odd. Now, what you'll notice here is that, let me enlarge that. What you'll notice here is that none of those names, the GFG Alliance, Bluestone, or Catera, appears in this. But some good detective work by the journalists at FT established that BCC Ferrymead was Catera. It was a code name for Catera. And it's likely that BCC Bingera, which is like Ferrymead, is a sugar mill in Bundaberg, Lex Greensill's hometown. So he's obviously been responsible for naming the code names. It's likely also to be Catera because that 3.85 plus that 1.23% is 5%, just over 5%, 5.1% of 6.8 billion. So that's about $350 million. So that's 350 of the 400. So we can recognize that, but where is the GFG Alliance? And where is Bluestone? Can't see them, can we? So I looked at the other funds, and Credit Suisse has very conveniently managed to omit the obligor, the top 10 obligor exposure. So that's the same fund as of March, $7.2 billion in the fund, the 26th of February. And you can see it hasn't disclosed who the obligors are. Why do you think that is? Is it possible that they're hiding something? Because here's the next fund. Same deal. No names. And the third, no names. And the fourth, no names. So what I did instead was I decided to look at the sectoral allocations because I thought maybe maybe there'll be a clue there. And what I did was I looked at the 4 funds. I copied in the percentage exposures in each, and I then multiplied it out, and this is it summarized. And you can see that these 2 areas, basic resources, that would be Bluestone. And you can see there's a total of $1.1 billion there. So 850 of the 1.1 was Bluestone. So it's very hard to see how they wouldn't have been aware of that. I mean, crying out loud, 850 million is 8.5% of a $10 billion total. And industrial goods and services, which is the GFG Alliance is all steel companies. I mean, I suppose some of it could be in construction and materials, but construction and materials, if 350 of that is Katerra, then the other 350 of that, plus the industrial goods and services, is GFG. So those three are two exposures, is what it looks like, plus maybe some other odds and sods. But it's remarkable, isn't it? Really remarkable. So what I also wanted to point out was when I was looking at this earlier in the other video, which you should watch if you haven't watched it, PrimeVeer Limited, I found was a warehouse. And I said, well, you know, what is that doing there? It's about $100 million. And I wasn't doing my work carefully enough, because had I looked at accounts more closely, the very last note in the accounts disclosed the ultimate holding company, and the ultimate holding company was the ultimate holding company also of Shop Direct Holdings. But this journalist at the Times, James Hurley, he wrote an article on Saturday, the 27th of March, and he pointed out that one of the top 10 positions was an entity called PrimeVeer, and PrimeVeer's latest accounts show sales of only £4 million, which I thought was pretty odd. But he points out it's ultimately owned by the Barclay family, owners of the Telegraph, the Spectator, and Very, the online retailer previously known as Shop Direct. So that Shop Direct 2.84%, $300+ million, goes with the PrimeVeer 1.5. But as they very rightly point out, is that this was for a commercial mortgage on a warehouse. And that is about as far as you can get from a supply chain finance product whose terms come in days, not in years. So every time we see a new article about Greensill, there's a new revelation, and none of them are good. And I think that it's astonishing that the regulators haven't already stepped in. It's not clear to me who exactly regulates this, because Greensill, for most of its life, wasn't regulated. Lex Greensill himself only got an FCA authorization relatively recently, as I describe in my first blog, which you'll find on my website, behindbalancesheet.com. So what I'm going to do next week is I'm going to start writing and asking who's responsible and who's going to investigate. Because it seems to me that this is a company that's of, you know, systemic importance in finance. And we should ask ourselves, well, why wasn't it regulated? What loopholes allowed it not to be regulated? And let's close them. And let's investigate this. And let's see if there is wrongdoing, because it looks like there has been. And if there has been wrongdoing, then people should be brought to justice. And if there's been a fraud committed, then somebody should go to jail. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've enjoyed other videos. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.